What's up, softball players? Coach Dan Blewett here. In today's video, we're going to talk about the wrist snap in softball. I get this question consistently. It's just like every month or 2 months, someone asks, like, hey, how can I improve my wrist snap? How can I improve, my daughter doesn't throw that hard, and I think she just doesn't have the snap that other players have. And this is really a misnomer because in low speed sports like ping pong, obviously the ball goes really fast in ping pong, but if you had a ping pong paddle, which I don't, obviously when you're winding up to like slam it and you've got an easy like kind of lob, you definitely feel your wrist snap, right? And if you were just playing catch, if I was tossing this ball to the camera, I would feel my wrist go back and I would feel it snap forward. But the question is, does this actually happen when you're throwing a softball at high speed, at full speed, at normal speed in a game? The answer is no. So I know there's not as much high-speed video of softball players. So what we're going to do now, because I really want to prove that, just to break it to you, that there is no, like the wrist snap is not a relevant factor in throwing a softball with any kind of velocity. It's just not a factor. So if your daughter isn't throwing as hard as she is from talking to a player and you don't throw as hard as you wish you did, it has nothing to do with your wrist snap. It has nothing to do with strengthening your wrist. It has nothing to do with this motion here in general. It has everything to do with a lot of other factors, which I'll cover at the end of this video. But I'm going to show you now, as we jump to some slow motion video, I'm going to go to some baseball pitchers and some softball players and show you what their arm looks like at full speed. And you'll see that the wrist is relatively constant throughout the throwing motion and that there is really no snapping action from the wrist. It's a very constant acceleration of the arm. And then, of course, there's some force applied by the fingertips, but there is no back and forth, which I think is what we'd all agree is the quote unquote wrist snap. All right. So if you're new to my channel, I'm Coach Dan Blewett. I do tons of softball throwing mechanics, throwing drills, mental training videos. So if you're new here, welcome. Stick around and we're going to jump to some slow motion video. All right. So here we have a college softball player and she's going to make a throw from the outfield. So let's go in slow motion and watch the arm. So we can see the wrist laying back a little bit there, but as you're releasing it, see how the forearm is pretty much straight with the hand? Same at release here. And it's pretty much still straight there as well. And then it keeps coming through. So the important thing to remember is that the wrist is such a small joint. It can amplify force a tiny amount, but almost all of the force is going to come from the legs, going through the trunk and the upper body, then into the arm. The shoulder internal to external to internal rotation is the fastest human movement. So almost all of the power is coming through there, that incredibly fast shoulder rotation that flows through the arm. And then you can see that the wrist is pretty constant from here all the way through there. It's not going forward like a ping pong, like you'd swing a ping pong paddle. It's pretty much straight from there to there. Okay, so let's go to the next example. Okay, so here we have obviously a Division I baseball pitcher, and I'm not gonna be able to stop this one and go frame by frame as well, but let's watch. We'll go over and over and watch his arm position and his wrist position as he accelerates. He's throwing in the low 90s. So as you watch him accelerate the ball, you don't see any tremendous like flex back of the wrist as he goes forward. As he finishes, it's pretty straight up and down. And that turning over you see of the hand is the shoulder unwinding the entire arm. That's the pronation that happens on every throw from every player, baseball and softball. After you release it, it's not that the wrist is really going forward, it's the wrist is turning over at the end. But again, if you watch the forearm, it's pretty straight at release, and you don't see this dramatic like forward action of the wrist. Okay, so here's another baseball pitcher. Let's watch as his wrist, again, stays constant. It will turn over, but it won't really go forward much at release. As soon as the ball's out of his hand, his wrist is turning in, which is pronating, which is unwinding the shoulder's rotation. But you can see his forearm is pretty long, and there isn't this big thrust at the end, which I think is what everyone refers to with that wrist snap. Like you just don't see this big forward movement of the wrist. You see the forearm pretty straight through the wrist, as the ball's accelerated. And again, his arm's going at 90 plus miles per hour. It's a different pitcher, but still throws very hard. You see the wrist turn over, but again, there isn't this thrust because if you think about it, the wrist can't suddenly exceed the speed of the shoulder. The shoulder is going incredibly fast, and the wrist and the hand are along for the ride, but they can't suddenly surge ahead and have your fingers and your wrist jumping to 95 miles per hour on a 90 mile per hour throw, which would be what would be required to get that extra little bit of oomph. But you can see the arm is delivered pretty much as like a straight line from elbow to fingers at release. All right, so here we have a college infielder, and she's going to throw sidearm. So let's slow this down, and let's go. We can go kind of frame by frame at the end. So if you look from here to here, do you see much of a change in her wrist position? You don't. So from here to here to here, you don't see any real legitimate snapping motion with the wrist. Again, you see the forearm turning in with the pronation, but you don't see the wrist thrusting itself forward to add more velocity to the throw. What you see is a wrist that is in line with the rest of the arm down at the elbow, and then it moves through as a unit. Again, the wrist doesn't jump in front to add any real additional snap to the throw. Okay, so here we have a catcher, and let's watch her as well. So as we go through in slow motion, you can see that again the wrist is pretty constant. You can see it's back a little bit, but like through release, again the arm stays pretty long, and again the ball's gone at this point. So any power that was going to be applied to it would have had to be applied here to here, and you can see that wrist is very straight at release. So when we're practicing these wrist flip drills, it's not clear where that would ever happen in a throw, where we're propping our elbow up and having the wrist flop all the way back and then all the way forward. You don't see that here in any of these throws. That arm is pretty much dead straight at release right there, and I think that's very telling. This is probably one of the best examples I've shown yet, where that wrist is just exactly in line with the rest of the arm at release. So again, you're not seeing the wrist jump in front and apply more force. What you see at release is the hand turn inward. See how her palm is now facing away from her body? That's again that pronation that happens where the shoulder's unwinding and that force is dissipated, but you don't see the wrist jumping forward to add that snap to a throw. Okay, so hopefully the breakdown on slow motion helped you, because obviously softball throwing velocity is really important. That's why I have this channel. That's why I put out drills and lots of tips for you here. But there's still so many myths that we need to bust and get through. So here's what actually matters. Here are the factors that you're actually looking for if you or your daughter or your players on your team don't throw a softball as hard as they should. Basically, the bigger things are what their shoulder blades do. Does the shoulder blade pull back? Most players are kind of out in front, and so they push the ball. Lots of players have improper joint angles. So if you try to throw with this long angle in your elbow here, you're not going to throw nearly as hard. It's going to look very pushy and slow. It's not going to look whippy. So we want to look for joint angles of 90 degrees and less. So especially for infielders, you'll see joint angles like this at my elbow where there's a less than 90-degree angle. And 90 is okay. So anywhere from here to here, but anything from out here and beyond, it makes it a really long lever and really difficult to throw a softball well. Other things, does your chest fly open toward your target? So when I'm about to throw to you and I land, my chest should be closed facing away from my target. But lots of players, they land here as they start to accelerate the ball, and now they've already wasted some of their power in the air. It's the same thing with hitting. When you land on your front foot, you've wasted a lot of power already. Or if your hips fly open when you're hitting, you waste a lot of power, you lose it into the air. Those are main factors. Other ones are your fielding technique. Bad fielding technique puts players in bad positions to throw well. Bad footwork puts players in a bad position to throw well. And slow footwork puts players in a bad position to throw well. Those are the big foundational things that if you're saying, hey, I'm watching my daughter, I'm watching players on my team, or I'm just struggling and I don't know why I don't throw as hard as other girls, Those are the big factors where if you just spend a lot of time on each one of those, and I have drills and videos for all those on this channel, so be sure to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos here on my Snap Softball channel. Those are the big ones that if you focus on them, you'll probably gain a mile per hour for each of those big 6 things that I just covered. And then 6 miles per hour is probably a 10% jump for most of you, which is a really huge jump. If you go from throwing 50 to 56, you can now play third base instead of playing only second base. Like, it makes a really big difference. If you go from throwing 45 to 50, it's a pretty big difference. So with all this stuff, I think it's tough for parents and coaches to understand, why is my daughter not getting the results that she wants? Or for you as a player, why am I not throwing as hard as my teammates do? I don't see what the reason is. But let me tell you, it's not the wrist snap. That's the big point here. It's not the wrist snap. There really is no wrist snap. I hope that was clear from the slow motion videos. But all the other things, the footwork, the fielding, the shoulder blades, the chest direction, staying closed, having a high front side, all these things, I'm not going to cover all of them in this video. Those are really the important things that matter when you're trying to throw a softball harder. All right. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, share with a friend. If you're new to my instruction, I have tons of videos here for free on YouTube. I also have in-depth softball throwing courses called She's Got a Cannon. I have 2 versions. One's a very in-depth analysis. It teaches you how to analyze your own mechanics and how to prescribe the right drills to fix them. The other course is a shorter course and gives you everything you need to know. Just do it. Here's the programs, follow them, and you're good to go. All right. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you here in the next video.